almost every sitcom, there's a character who supposedly can't make rent. And yet, they're standing in an apartment 3 working adults couldn't pull off and go to the bar every night. Maybe an expensive coffee every morning as the cherry on top. So why is this even a trope? Why do shows keep telling us these characters are broke? And what did watching it actually do to us? Let's go over 6 of these examples to get the answer to all those questions. Starting with Joey. Joey can't pay rent. The show tells us this constantly. He's a struggling actor who eats his roommate's food and can't afford headshots half the time. He also somehow ends up with a duck and a chick because he saw them in a window and felt sorry for them. Oh, and he lives in a 2-bedroom in the West Village. For anyone who doesn't know, the West Village in the 90s was already one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Manhattan. The apartment has a balcony and a kitchen big enough for all 6 of them to hang out in. I've tried looking it up. Daniel Chun, a real estate expert in New York, noted on Instagram that it would rent out for just about $6,500 per month. Can you afford that? I certainly can't. Even if I were living with a duplicate of myself, I wouldn't be able to afford it. And honestly, the show knows. Most of Joey's career is being financed by Chandler. The headshots and the acting classes are coming from across the hall, and so is half of what Joey eats. There's an episode where Joey tries to pay him back and Chandler waves it off because he knows Joey doesn't actually have it. When Chandler eventually buys out Joey's half of the apartment so he can move in with Monica, he overpays on purpose because he knows Joey needs the cash. The whole friendship is working as Joey's income, and the show isn't hiding it. Same thing is happening across the hall. Rachel walks out of her wedding in the pilot and ends up at Central Perk as a waitress. From that moment, she's somehow living in Monica's huge rent-controlled apartment while her clothes still look like the entire Bloomingdale's spring catalog. Rachel's broke comes from walking away from her family money, while Joey's needs Chandler to keep covering things. In both cases, the apartment doesn't go anywhere, even when the income should mean it does. We were watching a sitcom about the struggles of adult life, like being broke and not seeing the safety net underneath the whole story. Then there's Penny. She lives alone in a 1-bedroom in Pasadena, and her money comes from waiting tables at the Cheesecake Factory and the occasional audition that mostly doesn't pay. She borrows from Leonard constantly, and Sheldon ends up covering her rent more than once. There's a whole running joke about how much she owes him, but she never loses the apartment. Now, Pasadena isn't Manhattan, but a 1-bedroom in Pasadena on Cheesecake Factory tips and the occasional yogurt commercial is still not realistic. Oh, and her apartment itself, it has a separate living room and a kitchen big enough to actually cook in. The kind of place a regular working adult would need to budget hard for. I mean, just looking at the fact that across the hall there is 2 working adults living in a similar apartment should tell you enough. Luckily, the show knows. It isn't even hiding the safety net here. Leonard and Sheldon are both quietly bankrolling parts of her life, and the rest of the building basically has her back. But the show never sits with that. Penny is still the broke neighbor who's just figuring it out. So why is that even a thing? Well, let's first cover one more example, and then I'll give you that answer. New Girl drops Jess into a loft in downtown LA after a breakup. The loft has multiple bedrooms and a common area big enough to fit a third of the show's plots in it. Jess teaches kindergarten. She loses her job in season 2 and the loft doesn't go anywhere. Have you actually ever looked at that place? It's massive. Downtown LA lofts in the early 2010s were not cheap, and Jess's share of it on a teacher's salary, then no salary at all, doesn't add up. But the loft stays. It always stays. Now, Jess is the show's center. Someone in the background is the one doing something new with the trope. That person is Nick. Nick is what the broke character looks like when the writers stop pretending to be aspirational. The earlier versions all had a dream they were chasing. Joey wanted to make it as an actor, Penny was kind of trying to break into the same thing. Nick just doesn't want anything. He's a bartender who likes being a bartender, and the show is happy to let him stay there. There's an episode where Schmidt has to take over Nick's finances because Nick has been keeping his cash in a sock under his bed and writing checks he can't cover. The whole gag is that he's so broke as a grown man that he can't even use a bank account properly. That's what the trope has evolved into by 2011. The broke character doesn't have to be on the way somewhere anymore. They can just be a guy who refuses to grow up, and the show frames that as charming because the loft makes him look like he's exactly where he should be. Would real life in 2026 find that charming? Comment what you think. The wildest part is that all of this is still just the surface, which leads me to the next question. If the broke character was never really broke, what were we actually watching? And why has every show kept doing this? The answer is sitting in plain sight in every one of these shows. We've been watching the broke character when the actual story has been about the people standing around them. Just look at the pattern. Chandler covers Joey, Monica's apartment catches Rachel, Leonard and Sheldon take care of Penny's rent when she can't, and the loft holds Jess and Nick through every chaotic decision they make. Nobody in any of these shows is walking around with the actual weight of being broke because someone else is always making sure they don't fall. Sitcoms need their characters in a certain economic position to even function as a comedy. There's actually a whole McLean's piece on why working class sitcoms tend to fail commercially. The short version is that audiences don't want to spend their TV time watching characters worry about real money. They want romantic problems, social problems, anything except the slow grind of actually being broke. So the genre removes that pressure from the script. The way most sitcoms pull this off is by giving the broke character a safety net so soft they can keep being chaotic and emotionally messy every week without any actual consequence. Joey can blow off auditions because Chandler is keeping the lights on, and Penny can chase parts she'll never get because Leonard will cover dinner. Jess losing her job becomes a story about self-discovery because the loft never lets it become a story about rent. Then there's the side nobody talks about. Multicam sitcoms get filmed in front of a live studio audience, and the set has to fit the cast plus all of the production equipment and 100 audience members who need to actually see what's happening. A realistic broke apartment is a closet with one window. You can't shoot a sitcom inside of a closet. So the apartment gets sized up for the cameras, and the audience at home absorbs it as lifestyle. The combined effect is a genre that fundamentally cannot show you what being broke actually looks like, right? Well, they can. There's a show that did it, and the way they solved this trope is amazing. But before we get there, there's one more version of this trope worth looking at. The show that pulls the safety net trick on characters who aren't even supposed to be broke. How I Met Your Mother is a great example of this. Nobody on that show is supposed to be broke. Ted is an architect, Marshall is studying law and then becomes a lawyer, and Lily teaches kindergarten. These are stable, white-collar adult lives. I know Jess also teaches in New Girl, but we'll get to why this example is different. The three of them share apartment 4C, a two-bedroom above McLaren's on the Upper West Side. Ted and Marshall took it after college, then Lily moved in when she and Marshall got engaged. Robin and Barney don't live there, but they're there constantly, and the show treats the apartment like a clubhouse for all five of them. They have an abundant lifestyle. They're at McLaren's almost every night. There are weddings and bachelor parties, plus weekend trips that nobody seems to budget for. Ted drops big money on suits and dates. The math doesn't fully work on three modest professional salaries, even with the rent split between them, but we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. The interesting thing about How I Met Your Mother is that the show actually tried to engage with money once. Lily has a secret credit card debt arc. She's been hiding 15 maxed out cards from Marshall, and the whole thing comes out in the episode where they try to buy a house. The banker pulls her credit history and Marshall finds out about it on the spot. Then the show makes the debt disappear. Marshall takes a high-paying corporate job and Lily sells some paintings on the side. By the next time we check, the debt is gone and they're back at McLaren's like none of it ever happened. Wait, what just happened? The show looked at real money problems and sat with them for one episode, then walked everything back so the fantasy could keep going. And the trope goes beyond sitcoms. Sex in the City is HBO prestige drama, not a network sitcom. The lighting is moodier and the format is hour-long with no laugh track. And it still pulls the broke character safety net trick. Carrie Bradshaw writes one weekly column for the New York Star. Best estimates put her at $2,000 to $4,000 a month. She lives in a rent-controlled studio on the Upper East Side, paying $700 a month, which is already a fantasy. The lifestyle on top of it is where everything gets really messy. There's a famous episode in season 4 called Ring-a-Ding-Ding. Carrie's ex-fiance, Aiden, owns her apartment, and after they break up, he gives her 30 days to buy the apartment or move out. She needs $40,000 for a down payment and has nothing saved. Miranda sits down to add up where her money has gone and finds out she spent $40,000 on shoes. There's your down payment. Then it does the safety net move anyway. Big offers her a check for the down payment, which she refuses to cash. Charlotte ends up up giving her the diamond engagement ring from her failed marriage as collateral. The apartment is saved and the lifestyle keeps going. Even when the show puts the financial absurdity on screen and lets the characters say it out loud, it still bails her out through the people around her. So even a prestige drama can't escape this trope. How have the others ever escaped this? Well, explore that part with me. The best example is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. On paper, Sunny has the exact same setup as Friends. A small group of friends in their late 20s living in a major American city, hanging out at a bar, mostly working there, getting into low-stakes weekly drama. Then, Sunny actually commits. Charlie lives in a single-room apartment that the show treats as a real place. Cans of cat food on the floor, Charlie and Frank sleeping ass to ass on an old pull-out sofa bed, cooking on the radiator. The toilet is in the hallway and the door doesn't work. So Frank and Charlie take turns physically being the door for each other. Charlie wears the same clothes every episode because he repairs them instead of buying new ones. This is what being broke actually looks like. Getting creative to make ends meet with what you have. The gang as a whole runs Patty's, a bar that barely brings in any customers. None of them is on the way somewhere, and neither is there any friendship safety net. Roseanne did this with a family instead of a friend group. The Connors are one paycheck from disaster every single episode. Lights get cut off, bills get juggled, and Roseanne works at a plastics factory while Dan does sporadic construction. Malcolm in the Middle does the same with a house that's falling apart and a mother working exactly 38 hours at a drugstore so the company doesn't have to give her health insurance. The kids are visibly embarrassed by what they don't have. Vice called it a socialist masterpiece, but really the show just takes being broke seriously enough to let it shape everything. What ties all three together is the same thing. Scrap the safety net. Make them feel the pressure of the real world. The result is comedy that hits harder and characters that feel real, because the viewer isn't being quietly lied to about what working life actually costs. But the trope is still everywhere. Almost every new sitcom with a broke character pulls the same trick, which leaves the only question that actually matters. What has watching all of this done to us? We grew up absorbing what struggling adulthood looked like from people whose struggle was always softened. The friend group, the apartment, the bar life, the chaos that never actually punished anyone. And then we grew up and noticed our lives didn't look like that. The lives we were comparing ourselves to were never possible to begin with. A lot of us grew up feeling like we failed at adulthood, when really we've just been measuring ourselves against a fantasy. The broke character trope taught a generation what struggling life was supposed to feel like, then handed them a version of it that didn't actually exist. And we somehow took the gap as our personal failure. But it's not as bad as what the lack of realism has done to breakups. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, click here to find out.